Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone in the franchise world. My name is Paul Segreto, and this is Franchise Today. I'm here with my co-host, Stan Friedman, coming off a celebratory weekend of his 39th birthday. Happy birthday, Stan.
You'd be a lot closer to accurate, Paul, if you flipped those numbers around and made a 9-3 out of that 39. But otherwise, I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking, Paul.
Well, that was great. I'm glad it came about on a weekend. You had a chance to unwind a little bit, and it's always good to unwind. So I'm glad you had a great birthday and many, many more to come. You know, Stan, as we promoted today's show, Bridging Worlds focused on combining current and future business environments, new business models, the Internet of Things, disruptive technologies, and unique ideas that are particularly relevant for marketing, media, advertising, and customer communications. That's what was stated at last year's Digital Marketing Expo and Conference, and that's what our guest, Steve Baxter, will be talking some about as we introduce him to the show. But, you know, Stan, why don't you take us through the front of the house and let us know what's going on in the great world of franchise.
Something I picked up on the IFA Smart Brief yesterday caught my eye, Paul, and it has to do with something that we never talk enough about, and that's our veterans. And so there is a hot new franchising contest out there being promoted by the 7-Eleven Corporation called Operation Take Command. And what 7-Eleven is inviting veterans from U.S. Armed Forces in the Finger Lakes region of the U.S. to do is take part in a national contest organized by 7-Eleven. So Operation Take Command will take applications from military men and women who've been honorably discharged, and to qualify, these veterans must be 21 years or older, they must be a U.S. resident, have excellent credit, and at least 3 years of either leadership experience in retail or in restaurants. Then from all the applications that they receive, 7-Eleven's leadership is going to pick 25 semifinalists who will then submit a video explaining why they believe they are deserving of the grand prize. And the grand prize, of course, will be to win a 7-Eleven franchise without paying any of the initial franchise fees, which typically range up to $190,000. Wow. So in the Rochester area alone, in the Finger Lakes, there are 73 7-Eleven stores operating, and a vast majority of those are open for franchising. So for those who want to learn more about this promotion and how they can participate, 7-Eleven will select the final 7 contestants, and the public will be allowed to pick the final 3 via, guess what? The 7-Eleven Facebook page. So for more on the contest, https://facebook.com/7-Eleven. www.facebook.com/7-Eleven. What a great promotion. What a great opportunity, because all too often, no matter how much help companies that are pro-veterans in franchising try to provide, all too often the barrier to entry is just too extreme for those veterans to get involved. For 7-Eleven to be offering up to as much as $190,000 to help promote this promotion and make it a reality for some lucky veteran is an amazing, amazing commitment. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and keeping an eye on that in the weeks ahead, Paul. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about on the front of the house today is just a little bit of shameless self-promotion, in that we're really only weeks away right now from this year's Franchise Expo South. And I know that you and Teresa Huska and Lee Plave have your annual session in which you'll be talking about Web 2.0, data and social media in franchising, which is about a three and a half hour session that has built a lot of momentum for you guys over the years, and that I think I've seen you do this 2 or 3 times myself already. And I, too, have a speaking assignment.
And you came back for more.
Yeah. I, too, have a speaking assignment this year. You know, I used to do a lot of talking at the expos for IFA and diversity. But this year, I'm honored to have been asked to deliver the 3-hour session on the A to Z's of buying a franchise, which MFV promotes every year to attendees coming to not only walk the trade show floor, but the smarter ones are the ones that hit those learning symposia rooms and get a better handle on how to manage their time on that show floor and what they ought to be thinking about instead of just talking to brands that they recognize by name. Learning a little bit more about how to do the introspectives and take a closer look internally at what's important to you before you try to figure out what kind of a franchise you might want to own. So I'm thrilled and honored to have been given that opportunity by our good friend Tom Portuzzi, who, by the way, is on the roster of upcoming guests, but we'll tell our audience a little bit more about that later. Looking forward to Franchise Expo South. Wish there was a little bit more time between it and the IFA this year, or I wish that they were a little closer, and one plane ride could have taken care of both, but there's just enough time in between to come back home, do the laundry, take the dog for a walk, pack another bag, and off we go again.
That's true. And for all those listening that are on the franchise candidate side, because we do have a lot of people that do listen as they explore franchising, you can claim your free pass to Franchise Expo South by going to www.franchiseexposouth.com and use the promo code FESAB. Tell them Paul and Stan sent you. You know, Stan, looking at the CNN right now, Dow Jones Industrial Average down 473 points, and almost simultaneously I get a report in front of me that just came out. Let's see where this from. It's from one of the news services, and it's about the U.S. franchises set to grow in 2016. So despite the worries of an economic downturn, they say one sector is poised for another year of solid growth in 2016, and of course that sector is franchising. They're saying 1.7% growth forecast for this year would bring the total number of U.S. franchises to 795,000 plus units. It says among the franchises, hiring and job creation trends are also strong. The IFA forecast employment increase of 3.1% to 9.1 million franchise jobs, up from last year's 8.8 million jobs. So good news. Hopefully it runs parallel with better news on Wall Street, but those are conversations for another day, and certainly with Mr. Crisanti, the CEO of the IFA, being our guest on February 10th. That's just a few short weeks from now. It'll be interesting conversation for sure. So this week on the show, Stan, as you know, we have Steve Baxter returning, the managing director of eKomi North America, focusing on challenges facing many small businesses today. We hope to be able to learn how this solution helps to increase sales, reduce returns and complaints, and drive organic traffic. You know, it is a world of reviews and recommendations, but of course on the other side, it's also a world of protecting brands. So it'll be an interesting conversation. And with that, Steve, I welcome you back to Franchise Today.
Thanks, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here. And hi, Stan. It was good to see you just a couple of days before your birthday last week. I got to tell you, mate, you really don't look a day over 64.
So kind of you to say. You know, looks are deceiving, though. It wasn't that many years ago that Ben Franklin and I were flying kites together. It's a good run, Steve. Baxter, it's been a great run.
Well, it's always nice to talk to you on the phone like this, but it's always better to see you in person. So I've enjoyed our lunches over the past couple of weeks.
Ditto that, my friend. Ditto that, and it's always good to see you. By the way, Paul, I got to ride in a rocket-fueled, Baxter-piloted Tesla, man. What a car. Wow. That car goes, and it doesn't make a sound doing it. And actually, Baxter try to scare the life out of me. He took his hands off the wheel, and the car continues to drive itself. It's a pretty amazing vehicle. If you've not been inside a Tesla, you owe it to yourself to go drive one, or at least take a ride in one. Just let someone else but Baxter drive it for you, because he tried to scare the life out of me. Came close. Would have missed that birthday if he had.
Well, it's a pretty... I mean, when you talk about the Internet of Things, crikey. I mean, there's a thing on four wheels that is completely defined by what's downloaded over the Internet into that car. It's quite amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to scare you, Stan. It wasn't me. It was the software.
Yeah, it's just I'm a Honda guy, and going from a Honda into that Tesla was like going off of a pea shooter into a rocket-propelled ship to the moon.
Well, yeah. I don't think that could be a better segue in today's topic, going from the old way of going down to Sam Drucker's general store and picking up the handle and talking into the little microphone and asking the operator to connect you, to where we are today with respect to communications. And, Steve, as you talked with us once before, I believe we talked about, Net Promoter Score and customer experience and what have you. And of course, the world is just moving at such a rapid pace, such like your new Tesla. And it is all about, customer loyalty, building brand reputation, customer centricity, everything imaginable. So for the benefit of our listening audience, as you are now with a different organization, why don't you first tell us about what you're doing right now and the current organization?
Oh, for sure. Well, eKomi is a European company headquartered out of Berlin in Germany, and actually Europe's leading ratings and review software company. The regulatory bodies in Europe seem to be a little bit ahead of the FTC here in the States in terms of how they control what you can do, what you can do, really mandating how reviews and ratings can be used to promote your company, your products, your services. And eKomi started out in 2008. And since then, we've got about 14,000 customers, predominantly in Europe. You can't walk down a high street in any major European city without going past a customer of eKomi. Most of the major retailers in Europe use the eKomi software products, and actually we're doing really well in banking and insurance, and banking and insurance in particular, because of these regulations which are coming down about how reviews and how ratings and endorsements can be used, displayed, how you can talk about your company through the lens of the customer is, like I say, something which is being controlled. And eKomi recognized that these regulations were coming and designed a review process and a ratings process to make sure that companies stay compliant with the regulatory bodies now, the trade commissions. Now, my role is to bring eKomi into North America, and I've been doing that for about a year now, and we've enjoyed some early success with some actually major franchise brands, as well as some major non-franchise brands as well.
Steve, is this a product that has any barriers to entry for smaller franchise organizations, or is this available on a pretty level playing field to where even smaller startup or emerging brands are able to use the product affordably?
The vast majority of our customers, Stan, are small businesses. Of the 14,000 customers we've got, I would say, I can't give you a percentage. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I mean a vast majority of them are the what I would consider to be franchisee level sized operations, We do have a lot of large corporate customers that deploy the software into branch locations, into individual stores, and we have pricing models that suit anywhere from a local store all the way up to a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate.
I mean, hearing you say that on high streets all across Europe, you can't walk down a street without these retailers being on the eKomi platform, really beg that question, because it would seem to me that it would have to be affordable enough for that many types of businesses at all sizes and levels to go on the platform, which I think is a barrier to entry with some of the others in that space that are more focused on larger corporate entities and to the exclusion of the individual retailers. Isn't that correct?
Well, it is, and what we're seeing is, we're seeing price points all over the place. There are companies spending millions of dollars a year on this kind of software, which is obviously out of reach for the vast majority of franchisees. You need a product which is costing $10, $15, $20, maybe per location, maybe $100, depending on the suite of services that you're getting. But it needs to be that sort of magnitude, and that's where we're at. I mean, we do have the high price item, and we've got the more affordable option as well. But you don't see many franchisees putting their hand in the pocket and coming out with $100,000 to buy some software.
Sure. And just a quick follow-up that I'm going to back away in a minute, because you and Paul probably can go for a full hour just between social media and the interactions that are pertaining to social media. But I have a quick question, and I think it ties some to the Google connection that you've got with eKomi, about the integrity of these surveys and responses. Because, so many people of late, I hear, have been worried about the integrity of some of the reports that you see on social media sites. I'm not going to name names, but are they real, or are these really real customers, or are these being spoofed, if you will? So, talk a bit about the differentiation between your product and others, and how that can't happen with eKomi.
Right, that's a really good question, Stan. I've been pushing this review stuff for 9 years now. Started off in franchising with this, bringing Net Promoter in, and really trying to sell the benefit of listening to your customer, bringing those reviews in, and not only like listening to what they have to say to improve your business, but to then turn those things around, publish them, and show other people what people think about your business. And back then, I don't think people were really thinking too much about faking reviews. But now, the impact of reviews on your business is so huge that it is opening up. It's opening up a channel for people to cheat. And all of the trade commissions around the world had figured this out. And it almost doesn't matter what research you read, Stan. I've read stuff which says if you read 3 negative reviews about your business, about a business, it's enough to change your mind of about 63% of consumers. And so, with a staggering statistic like that, you can see why people might want to cheat. And you can also see people cheat enough that the regulatory bodies are going to come down on this and say, well, wait a second, this isn't right. This is not right for the consumer. So we now have really 2 kinds of review. From Google's perspective, you mentioned Google, because that's really the first port of call. Google separates reviews out into trusted and untrusted. And an untrusted review would be something like a Yelp review or a TripAdvisor review. And I'm not saying those sites can't be trusted, but what I am saying is that I can leave a TripAdvisor review or a Yelp review, never having stayed at a hotel, never having bought a product, never having bought a meal. And I could say good things if it's about my restaurant or a friend's restaurant, to say bad things if it's about the competition. And so while these reviews that do appear in search, they are considered to be untrusted. And so when you're looking at these 5-star ratings that you see like a number against it, you'll never see a number against a Yelp review or a TripAdvisor review because they're untrusted. But trusted reviews where Google says, we understand the process that this company has gone through to get this review, they do have a number against it. That's when you see like 4.3 next to the stars. And eKomi is one of a handful of companies in the world that has this trusted relationship with Google. And as a result of this, when you use eKomi to go get a review from your customer and then publish that review to the outside world, Google sees that as being trusted. And so it's treated differently from any other kind of review. And it helps your Google search, it helps your click-through rates, and ultimately it actually brings down your pay-per-click costs. And I'm not sure if this is a longer answer than you're looking for, Stan, but when Google comes to figure out how much you should be paying for your click when you're using AdWords, for example, the algorithm behind that includes user-generated content, and it's looking for relevance. It's not just a bidding process. And so if you're like many of the larger franchise brands out there, and some of them are our customers who are spending $1 million a month on AdWords, the opportunity to save, say, 20% on your pay-per-click costs, or the opportunity to increase your click-through rate by 17% or so, it's real money. And that's what we do for businesses via this relationship with Google.
So let's look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. Earlier in the show, as we were talking about early stages of communication, I mentioned Sam Drucker, and you might not even know, Steve, who Sam Drucker was. It was an old TV show, a couple of TV shows where he was in. It was Petticoat Junction and the Green Acres, and Stan, I'm probably dating myself on this, but it was small town USA. It was the country, and Sam Drucker was the proprietor of the general store, and which was really the center point of the town. He knew everything that went on. Everybody came and went through his place. He was in general proximity to the train which ran through the town, which of course that was a third show, actually, Petticoat Junction, that he was on as well. So in essence, back then he was the customer review site. He knew the good, he knew the bad, the ugly. When somebody came in and said, "Where's a good restaurant?" he would tell them. If they said, "I'm building a home, where should I go?" he would tell them. And it was a trusted review because he basically had no middle ground. He had nothing to gain one way or the other. He was a trusted review. Now, of course, we fast track a lot to where we are today, because not only do we have all this online, obviously, and we have the situation of there being untrusted reviews, and as you said, you could post a review and never have even eaten at the place before. But what compounds this is the fact that we are in an instant gratification society. We have smartphones at our fingertips. And in the past, when somebody was ticked off at a business, they literally had to leave the place, go home, take care of the kids, settle down for the night. And if it was still bothering them, then maybe they took out the old typewriter and pounded away at it and sent a letter to the Attorney General or whatever. Today, they got the kids in tow in one hand and the smartphone in another, and they're posting this review before they even get out to their Suburban. I mean, it's a phenomenal world right now. And I really don't think, and this is probably more the case when we deal specifically with individual franchisees as well as, any other small business owner. I really don't think they understand the impact that not only a negative, but what a positive review can do for them. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Paul. And that store owner, talking over the fence, has been replaced now, by these reviews. And I mean, when was the last time you walked into Best Buy or somewhere like that? Saw a printer sitting there, and you're looking at it, and you look at your phone and go like, I want to see what people say about this. It's normal. It's hard to do a search today without checking on the word review, on the end of it. The one saving grace, though, Paul, is that companies like Google have figured this out. They're not sitting there in a vacuum in isolation. They do understand the ramifications of this, and so they also see that also searches can get hijacked. So let's say that you're looking for a Chevy Cruze, and you do a search on a Chevy Cruze, and you see this thing pop up, and you click on it, and next thing you know, you're looking at a Ford Focus, because Ford have hijacked that search. And so Google has sort of figured this thing out, and this is this trusted versus non-trusted reviews. And when you're using a product like eKomi, this is where we can level the playing field for you, because our searches, Google sees our content quite differently from untrusted content. And so if you've got, if you're using eKomi and you've got 100 reviews, those 100 reviews are going to appear on the top of the list, because Google sees them as trusted, and they're going to beat out the 100 Yelp reviews because they're viewed as untrusted. Paul, I put software into tens of thousands of franchises doing reviews, and I go back and I look at, because over the years now, I've got companies that have got thousands and thousands of reviews, thousands, and you do a search and they don't appear anywhere. And it's simply because Google's ignoring them, and Google's ignoring them because they're not trusted reviews. They're just there. It's just content there, but they don't really pop up as a review. But when they see eKomi reviews and see there's some trust behind that, that's where they're resequenced. So Google has got technology to help with this problem, Paul. But it is very real, as you've correctly pointed out.
You're listening to Franchise Today. I'm Stan Friedman along with Paul Segreto, and we're brought to you by the Franchise Foundry, a business accelerator that helps early-stage franchise systems stand up and emerging brands to move forward. The Franchise Foundry is headquartered in Houston, and as I said, it is headed by my co-host, Paul Segreto. Franchise Today is also brought to you by yours truly and FRM Solutions, where we offer robust, out-of-the-box CRM and content management software solutions tailored specifically to the needs of the franchise community for franchisors to manage their relationships with both prospective as well as existing franchisees. Paul, when you brought up Sam Drucker, I couldn't help go to the negative side of Petticoat Junction and think about the Mr. Haney's of the world, that these kinds of reviews need to protect consumers from. Steve, I want to ask you about, again, at the point of entry, if I remember correctly, I believe in a conversation we may have had around Christmas time, you told me that your product could be available directly to like multi-unit franchisees, to where you could go to the marketplace in a number of different ways. Why don't you talk a little bit, before Paul gets back into the next round of questions, just a little bit about point of entry and how people could engage with you to learn more about the product?
Yeah, so anybody can contact me directly at baxter@eKomi.com, or we can talk about it. There's our website, eKomi.com. I think multi-unit guys, especially, would find the product very useful because there's a notion called syndicated reviews. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept, Stan, but you'll have seen a syndicated review without necessarily knowing it's a syndicated review. So let's say that you're a hearing aid franchise, and you've got 30 stores, or you're a multi-unit guy, and you've got 3 of those stores, 4 of those stores. Well, you're all selling the same product. You're all selling the same hearing aid. A syndicated review is when you get one of your franchises who sells one of the products, gets the review from that. And that product is the exact same product sold by all the other units. You can take that review and then use that for all of the other stores as well, because you're not necessarily just talking about the seller of that hearing aid. You're talking about the feedback and quality of that particular product. And so multi-unit guys get economies of scale when it comes to getting feedback as well.
It's interesting, Stan, you were bringing up about Mr. Haney, and I think of all the characters back of not only, Petticoat Junction and Green Acres, but other shows. And I often think about putting franchise personalities on each of those characters. And of course, I had a chuckle when I started thinking about who in franchising would be the Mr. Haney.
I could come up with more than a couple for that one, Paul.
Yeah, I know, but I was also thinking about the 3 gals, Billy Joe, Bobby Joe, and Betty Joe, and thinking about who would fill those positions. That was a good chuckle. Steve, a lot of times we hear about customer reviews. A lot of people say, "Oh my God, I hate them. I hate Yelp. I hate every one of them that are out there." And I look at them and I say, I love them. I think it's a great way to drive sales. It's a great way to be out in front of your public audience. And the problem that I see is that, too many of them, and again, we always talk about the difference between proactivity and reactivity, is that they're reactive. They only respond to a negative review. How important is it to respond to a positive review?
I think it's important to respond to all reviews, Paul. I've heard over the years, one of the biggest questions I've heard over the years is, can I only show my positive reviews? Can I have a button in the software that just turns off the negative reviews? And I've said every single time, look, transparency is the key, right? If you've got 100% positive reviews, people aren't going to believe it. Having a few negatives on there is actually quite important. It makes it real because, look, we know stuff goes wrong. And actually how you respond to them can make all the difference. This is a real case scenario. We went scuba diving in, where was this? Where did we go? Belize. And there was a bunch of dive shops that we were looking at. And the one we chose was one who actually had some negative reviews. And we chose it simply because we saw this negative review. And the reviewer was saying, I dive all over the world, blah, blah, blah. Never have I seen something so bad, right? And the dive shop responded and said, for somebody who dives all over the world, I've been looking at some of the reviews you've placed before, and I haven't seen one review for any other dive shop. But thanks for taking the time to review ours. Sorry you had this experience with this person, but, we hire a lot of local kids. We're trying to help them and bring them into the employment market, and sometimes it goes a little bit wrong, but we're not going to stop trying. And I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. She's explained why something went wrong, but I think she's also called out the review a little bit. Maybe it was, a little bit exaggerated in terms of the negativity. But it says to me, these are real people who are trying. And we made the decision to go by, and we met the owner and the lady who wrote the response, actually, and it was fabulous. And I would really encourage transparency when it comes to reviews, and I would certainly encourage you to respond.
You know, that's the key word there is transparency, because as we talked about these fictitious reviews, okay, these placed, contrived reviews, you know, they come across just like that. And it's that transparency. But, you know, that takes it a step further. And this kind of goes back to, you know, your earlier guest appearance on Franchise Today, and we talked about the customer experience. Transparency has to be a big part of the customer experience. Your business is no longer just taking place within your four walls. And we do, as business owners, have an opportunity to create, and this is almost going to sound like an oxymoron, but we have an opportunity to create multiple first impressions, because the typical first impression is when I walk in the door or when I, you know, talk to somebody on the phone. But now we have this new first impression online in the digital space, and oftentimes that occurs in a review type setting. So we as business owners and every business owner out there should use this as an opportunity to help drive their business. And it goes right in line with what we talked about as far as the promo for the show, driving sales with while maintaining brand integrity. Because when you're transparent, you are working towards maintaining, you know, brand integrity. And I think your example of the dive shop owner explaining what they were doing, bringing young people into the employment market, I mean, helps to build their brand and their brand integrity. So I think it all works hand in hand. I think that business owners that refuse to embrace customer reviews, put aside what you talked about for a second as far as, you know, the discounts on pay-per-click and what have you, which, of course, when you're dealing with a big brand, that is a huge amount of money. But just by itself, to have this type of awareness created online where most people are spending a significant amount of their time is just huge. And guess what? You know, just being active in it doesn't really cost much, does it?
It doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you a little bit of time. But the idea is to create advocating, loyal, promoting customers. You know, I look at sales and marketing as an expense, a tax on your organization for not having customers out there that are willing to promote you and saying good things. And I think the review process is a perfect opportunity. And you mentioned brand experience, customer experience. Well, you know, another aspect of using customer feedback is to help improve the entire customer journey. So, for example, we're buying a lot of things online right now. We've seen that. It hurts your experience with a company if you buy something online and you've got to send it back. So one of the things that we're doing for Esprit, actually in Europe, huge retailer over there. One of the things we're doing there is we're handling their return process. And so when somebody returns something, we're asking for feedback. So we're not asking for feedback just when we sell something, but feedback is also important when something goes wrong. So, and I mention this because a lot of people think about customer feedback as just being, well, I've sold you something, now give me some feedback, because what I want to do is now use that to promote myself. Well, you should also use it to improve yourself and actually then to also improve the customer experience ongoing. So with Esprit, we say, why are you sending this back? And we have some fixed questions, and one of them is, how did it fit? Because oftentimes somebody's sending something back because it just doesn't fit right. And so we ask the customer, was it a size too big, size too small, just a little bit too big, was it just about right? And then we use that, and we take that information and we put it right back into the website. So when you're going online and saying, I want to buy this sweater, as you're hovering over the size, it says, our customers say that this fits a little bit too big, or this fits just about right. And so we've increased now the number of accurate orders as a result of the feedback coming in, and we've reduced the returns by a pretty good percentage, and it's millions of dollars. But more than that, forget about the money that we've reduced in the returns. What we've done is we've helped the business get it right first time. And we're also helping with the customer expectation, because what I believe to be the most important thing when it comes to your customer is just setting the expectation right. So back to my dive shop example, the expectation now was when we rolled up there, we thought we might get a kid in the boat, a local kid, who might not be quite as experienced as some of the other people that we're used to diving with. So we'd already built in a sort of expectation which says, if this doesn't go quite right today, it's okay, right? We're not going to worry about it. So I think transparency, setting expectation level, and using customer feedback in various areas of your business can pay dividends.
And we talk about experience, and of course the big word is customer experience. But as I wrote an article last year for Franchising World, customer experience is not only, or experience, a positively memorable experience, and not only about customers. And I think that if business owners would take the whole experience factor and apply it to all their relationships, because obviously they have a relationship with customers, their business would be dramatically improved. And that would be, of course, when we talk about in the franchise space, the franchisor-franchisee relationship. When we talk about being small business owners, the employer-employee relationship. And, of course, we're already seeing many customer review sites pop up for former employees, like the Glassdoor. So there's just a lot of things. And really, Steve, doesn't it just come down to good common sense in making sure that the experience is a positively memorable one whenever you possibly can, no matter what the relationship?
It is, Paul, and you're right. You mentioned the franchisor to franchisee relationship, and often people think because it's called customer experience, they think customer experience is all about the customers, as you said, but it really, that's really the last part in the chain. The customer experience really starts with how the employees on the front line engage with the customer, whether it's the franchisee's employees, the franchisee owner, engaging. That's really where it starts, and that's going to impact the franchisor, the main brand reputation. And that gets impacted as you go further up that chain by the relationship that the brand, the franchisor, has with their franchisees. And we've seen a connection as we've done tons of research on this, looking at the relationship, say, between employee engagement and the end customer satisfaction results. There is a direct correlation between the engagement of the employees and the ultimate outcome for the customer. And that goes all the way up the chain. And the hard part really is at the executive level, the brand level, because they're the ones who sort of set the tone for the culture of the entire organization going down, which ultimately meets the customer.
Steve, are you seeing any impact in the way your go-to-market strategies may have to be tailored some in terms of today's legal challenges with joint employment and with NLRB, and not to talk about the politics of it all, but the impact of the politics of it all is something that's very real world. And so in many cases, franchisors, as we have talked about in previous weeks, the more they do to properly protect the brand, the more challenging it becomes and daunting it becomes, because in another bucket, they expose themselves to more opportunity to be accused of joint employer. It would seem to me that a product like yours helps to give them some sensible navigation tools that their franchisees and they can collectively use to their benefit and sidestep some of that other noise or risk of too much control being exercised. I believe what you do is offer common sense as a solution as compared to control, and a great deal of opportunity might be presenting itself as an offset to some of those things that they can no longer do to protect their brand. Any thought on that?
Yeah, Stan, again, another great point. I think we all agree that what the NLRB is doing, the joint employer thing, is just is ridiculous beyond all comparison. I mean, it's crazy, and they are getting into the pocket of everybody. But I would say that there has to be though some control between the franchisor and the franchisee with respect to this issue, and there has to be some communication, because there are franchisees out there that there could be franchisees out there that are putting the brand at risk by the way that they go to market and the way that they handle reviews. And there are a few cases that come to mind. There was a plastic surgery franchise called Lifestyle Lift. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those guys. There was another one in Australia. Cracky, I'm trying to think of the name off the top of my head. It was a Electro Dry, and they went out there and they were putting fake reviews about the product, and they got fined $300,000. Wow. In New York. It's called astroturfing. This whole notion, and so the brand, the franchisor, should get close enough to the franchisee and give some degree of instruction to the franchisees in terms of what is and what's not acceptable. And these things are should be part of what's in the operating agreements between the franchisor and the franchisee. I don't think it's about confusing whether you're an employee or not, but it is about a business practice. And I don't think the latest nonsense which is going on should dissuade a franchisor from really taking this seriously and putting some proper controls in there at the franchisee level to make sure that everybody's protected from somebody going a bit rogue.
I think it's also a matter of franchisors using this opportunity to be proactive, and instead of chastising franchisees for poor reviews, instead look at them from an opportunity to improve operations, because ultimately you don't really typically see reviews just because somebody's rude and it's on an individual level. It's usually something that has to do with quality control, a process, a method that usually is at the crux of a much bigger operational problem. And as I've reviewed review sites with some of the brands that I work with, especially on the food service side, they say, oh, well, that was just so-and-so. And I said, well, let's look at the reviews over the course of a year, and let's look at the trend. And it's usually very, very eye-opening, but of course, as we said, a lot of them don't look at it from a proactive standpoint. They look at it as a reactive standpoint. And of course, when they do that, they try to defend their position, and it becomes a a bigger task than it needs to be. You know, Steve, you and I especially, and I know Stan as well, but you and I are in this social space so much with our clients, albeit we come in at different areas, but still with the same goal in mind. You and I could talk hours upon hours on this subject, and it's amazing how fast, 45 or 50 minutes blows by. And if you would, again, tell everybody how to get in touch with you, take a look at your business solution, and I'd love to leave the door open again for you to come back as a guest on a future segment of Franchise Today.
Well, thanks, Paul and Stan, and it's been a pleasure. It always is. I'm easy to reach. Baxter at eKomi.com. We'll be at the IFA, and we're looking forward to that. I think it's my 9th one. And really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. I mean, franchising is just a huge, big family, so we're looking forward to that. And also shout out to Lane and Brad, right, because the Franchise Unconference is coming up in March, and we're going to be there as well. We'll be around. Baxter at eKomi.com and website eKomi.com, eKomi.
And thank you for doing that, Steve. I was going to ask you to spell it so that phonetically it doesn't really lend itself too well without some help. So I'm glad you did that, because I was just about to ask you to do the very same thing. Enjoyed talking with you, Steve, and we'll see you soon down in Texas. And, Paul, I'm going to send it back your way to close us up and wrap it up.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve. As I mentioned last week, we're working on some plans for our annual franchise legal series, where we have some of the brightest minds in our legal community being a guest on Franchise Today, and it's very, very specific as to topics. Some of the topics we've had in the past is, creative development of franchise performance representations, to e-discovery, to avoiding litigation in a franchise system, and many, many more. So if you have some topics or even some suggested guests, please reach out to me at segreto.paul@gmail.com. And Stan, we have a great lineup coming up over the next 4 weeks. Next Wednesday will be Deb Evans, owner of Deb Evans Consulting and former president and partner of mine at Franchise Foundry. Really looking forward to having her back on the show. Then the following week, in a conversation that you had earlier and mentioned earlier, Tom Portese, the CEO at MFV Expositions, and he'll be on February 3rd, just ahead of Franchise Expo South. And then the following week, just ahead of the IFA, will be the IFA CEO, Robert Crescente, followed the following week by none other than very well-known franchise professional, Jerry Darnell. Wow, what a lineup over the next 4 weeks, Stan.
It's been a stellar lineup of one week after the next of connecting all the dots that it is franchising with some of the biggest and best in the business. And I think, Paul, that if we look back on what it is our goal and mission has been in these programs that we're putting forth, it's about sustainable growth. It's about doing franchising for the right reasons with the right people in the right places at the right times. And those conversations have woven through the fabric of franchisors, through suppliers, through executives and leadership of the association. And, it's a journey that I feel really good about taking, and where we're heading into 2016 in some as yet uncharted waters as to how some of the politics that we don't like talking about the politics themselves, but we certainly need to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to the impact that the politics has on our way of doing business. 2016 is going to be one stellar year, but it's going to be a different year than the last year was. And as is the case in sports, in business, and in life, my hope is that some of the things that are heard here will help executives in our business and prospective and existing franchisees make the necessary adjustments so that their businesses continue to thrive in interesting and challenging times.
Very well said, Stan. And this piggybacks your previous show which was sensible franchising. We've always been about sustainable franchising. And the two combined really is exactly what we were talking about today, about it being practical, about being transparent, about making improvements. And it really comes down to something that came out of the show today, in my mind, which was common sense. And too often than not, common sense is often overlooked. So I think as we move through this, time in franchising, and it's certainly not a time of gloom and doom, but of course it is a time of challenges. And I think if we start looking at it through the filter of sensibility, practicality, and common sense, along with improvement, I think we'll more than survive, we will thrive.
I couldn't have said that better. I'm not going to try to trump that at all. Well said, my friend.
All right, well, next week, Deb Evans will be on. Until then, my name is Paul Segreto, wishing you the best, the very best, in this great, great thing we call franchising. And Franchise Today is out.
When you're part of a military family, you understand sacrifice and support. At American Public University, we honor your dedication by extending our military tuition savings to your extended family. Parents, spouses, legal partners, siblings, and dependents all qualify for APU's preferred military rate of just $250 per credit hour for undergraduate and master's level programs. American Public University. Value for the whole family. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.